No, these photos are not photoshopped. His size is real. This young man from Michigan just won't stop growing. And there's a reason for it.
Hello, wonderful people. I'm Scott Leffler for WonderBot. And here is
Young man wouldn't stop growing. And the reason is incredible.
Before we begin, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell for more amazing videos.
For any parent, the growth of your child is a major concern, especially for a new parent of a first child. It's especially concerning. You hope that your child will continue to grow and be healthy, but sometimes a child doesn't grow in a normal way. For this mother, her only child was growing too fast, and he wouldn't stop. A mother from Michigan, Darcy Moss Elliott, gave birth to her son, Brock Brown. He was born at a healthy weight and size, weighing just under 8 pounds and measuring 22 inches long. But as Brock started to grow, it was clear to Darcy that something wasn't normal. Brock was growing at an incredible rate and was bigger than all the other children. She didn't know why, and like any concerned mother, she needed to find out what was going on. As a baby and young child, Brock Brown was a happy kid like the other children his age. But at an early age, however, it became apparent that Brock was ahead of his peers. Most kids go through growth spurts, but Brock seemed to be on one continuous growth spurt that just wouldn't stop. As Brock got closer to kindergarten, a shocking observation was made that brought some things into light. There was no denying it now. Darcy, Brock's mother, was mystified by her son's rapid growth. By kindergarten, her young boy was already towering over his fellow kindergartners at 5 foot 2 inches tall. You might want to know that the average height of a 5-year-old boy in America is a little under 4 feet. So Brock was way above his peers on the growth chart. Now Brock's mother couldn't deny that her son was unlike the rest, even most. She was getting very concerned. At this point, Brock Brown was about as tall as his mother, Darcy. Her sister Stacy, Brock's aunt, said, when he was small, he couldn't ride a bike. But when you're trying to teach a 6-year-old who's the same size as you, it's hard. You can't stabilize him. Apart from the usual hobbies that children like to take part in, Brock's mother noticed that it was getting more difficult for her to do regular day-to-day things to care for her young son due to his unusual growth. People had questions, and Brock's family didn't have answers. But they would soon find out. Darcy's health paid the price. It was getting increasingly harder to mother Brock. When you have a 5-year-old who's hurt themselves and they come running at you, you pick them up, said Darcy. I would carry him around when he was half the size of me, so I have a lot of back problems. She was understandably worried about Brock, so the family decided to take it to the professionals. They took him to the doctor to find out what was going on with him. Brock went through many consultations, and the medical professionals ran tests on him. His family was eagerly waiting to hear what the medical reason for his growth was. Brock received a diagnosis at the age of 5. He was diagnosed with a rare condition that affects about 1 in every 15,000 people. After a long, intense wait, his family finally heard the news. The doctors finally determined that he had a hereditary condition called Sotos syndrome, also referred to as cerebral gigantism. And with every diagnosis, there's also a prognosis. There's nothing that can stop him from growing. I don't know if he'll ever stop, his mother Darcy has said. Even though Brock's family now had a diagnosis and medical explanation for his growth, they were still worried because they had no idea what the future would hold for him. His family was dealing with the diagnosis and with the fear of what would happen to him, and now they had to deal with the prognosis. Darcy had to hear what the doctors would predict as the outcome for young Brock. The doctors told her that it was unlikely that her son would outlive his teenage years. Darcy was devastated. And if you're wondering if there's treatment available, there isn't. Apparently, there's no standard treatment for Sotos syndrome, and those with the genetic disorder are treated on a symptomatic basis. Despite this dark forecast, no one could have foreseen the incredible events that would happen. People with the rare genetic disorder, Sotos syndrome, are prone to excessive physical growth, particularly in the early years of life until the teenage years. While there are other behavioral and medical issues associated with cerebral gigantism, most individuals affected by the condition generally measure in the average height range by adulthood. But Brock Brown was different. and his case wasn't like the others. So what would come of Brock? Michigan boy Brock Brown continued to develop faster than his classmates throughout his middle school years. Even in high school, his height was almost inconceivable for a kid his age. Brock, aside from his height, was like any teenage boy. He liked to fish and spend time with his friends. At the age of 11, Brock was already 6 feet tall. By age 14, he loomed over the rest of the class at a height of 7 feet tall. Brock's doctors noted how Brock was different from others with his syndrome. Medical experts noted that Brock Brown was larger than most people with the genetic disorder. This caused doctors and his family to become increasingly concerned about his health. Despite the doctor's prognosis that Brock wouldn't make it past his teen years, he was defying the odds. He continued growing well into his early teen years. When Brock was 14, his family was becoming hopeful. They saw that he was still growing and he was managing. But then they received distressing news. Just as Brock's family was feeling hopeful, they had to hear more depressing news. Now, doctors were saying it was possible that he wouldn't make it past this age. Brock was suffering from symptoms that are common among people who have Soto syndrome. He suffers from a strain of his heart, a curvature of the spine, ADHD, intermittent explosive disorder, and some learning difficulties. He was born with only one kidney, and therefore doctors said that he can't take painkillers despite his chronic discomfort. "It kind of feels like a big tennis racket has gone through my back," he said about his chronic pain. "I do stuff to stop it hurting, and it makes me feel like there's a needle gone through it. It's hard to deal with." With Brock experiencing chronic pain, his family tried their best to make life more comfortable for him. It wasn't clear whether he'd ever stop growing. So his mother took extra measures and had to make things fit Brock. The ever-growing teen had a custom-made 8-foot bed and a special chair that cost him $1,000. His tailor-made bedroom comes in handy when he sleeps up to 16 hours a day. Despite all the difficulty that Brock and his family faces every day, his Aunt Stacy said that he takes on his condition day by day with a smile on his face. His mother happily added, "Overall, he's a big softie. His heart is as big as his body." But Brock had only one wish. Amazingly, Brock has kept a bright attitude through all of it. Those who know him can see that not only is his height extraordinary, he also has a great personality. The humble young man has one request. Brock has one wish. "I just wish the doctors could do something to help my pain." The poor kid just wants to feel better. As most teens wish for tickets to the Super Bowl or to go to some awesome concert, Brock only wanted to feel okay. So what's normal for Brock? Due to his condition, everyday activities are challenging for Brock. Standing for long times, walking through doors, and riding in cars can prove to be difficult talks. What may go unnoticed to the average person is something that causes an issue for Brock. Sitting in restaurant booths, going to movies, and fitting into small spaces are not easy feats. But Brock would soon become part of an incredible experience that would hugely impact his life. Brock Brown was well known growing up in Jackson, Michigan, but the teen went on to gain recognition on an international scale. In fact, he even broke an international record. Until 2015, Brown held the Guinness World Records title of world's tallest teenager until he turned 19 and became too old for the classification. And despite all the predictions that he wouldn't make it past the age of 14, his record is even more remarkable. Brock was about to be part of something life-changing. Things started to take a new turn. Brock participated in a TLC documentary called Tallest Teens in 2016. The show highlighted the lives of a handful of American youth who topped the growth chart. During that making of the show, Brock was finally able to do something he'd never done before. He got to meet and interact with other people with Soto syndrome. His mother said how the experience was particularly positive for her son and allowed him to understand that he wasn't alone. Brock Brown's growth rate hasn't slowed down. At the age of 19, he'd reached an extraordinary height of 7 feet 8 inches. He was like a tower compared to everyone around him. According to his mom, he's growing at the rate of 6 inches a year. It's estimated that Brock could beat the current record holder of the world's tallest man if his height continues at this pace. But Brock would continue to reach even more TV fame. Brock's appearance on television didn't end with the TLC program. He was also featured on an anti-bullying episode of The Maury Show in 2016. Brock and his mother Darcy shared their story and gave an encouraging message about putting an end to bullying. After being on the show, the Maury team gave Brock some gifts, including a new wheelchair and a 10-year supply of Brock's favorite fish sticks made by Gordon's. The family was very grateful for the generous gifts, and they definitely didn't anticipate what else was in store for them. Aside from all the caring people and the warm environment that normally surrounds Brock, his participation on the recent TV show created some amazing responses that had a big impact on him, his family, and people close to him. After the Maury show aired, Brock was contacted by more people who wanted to share their support. His family heard from others in Michigan who have Soto syndrome or who have children with the condition. His family was really pleased to hear from everyone who was reaching out to them. But Brock's medical issues weren't going away. While buying clothes can be an expensive feature of growing up in general, Brock Brown's need to find clothes that fit him and remain comfortable was difficult, not to mention expensive. Due to his size, Brock was regularly in need of specially designed clothing. In addition to the custom-made furniture that Brock Brown needed for his bedroom, he also needed a custom-made wardrobe. At 7 foot 8 inches and growing, everyday items like shoes and socks were almost impossible to find. Brock's family had to start to think outside the box if they wanted to make ends meet. The family already set up a support page for Brock Brown on Facebook, but they were floored when the forum attracted more than 15,000 likes after the TLC documentary aired on TV. The Michigan community also wanted to pitch in and help the family out, and the family's extremely grateful for all the love and support they were receiving. Benefits for Brock have been held and they fundraised about $10,400. But that's not all. Brock never expected to get so much attention and support from social media. Someone even donated tickets to a Detroit Pistons basketball game. Brock even got to meet some of the players. That's not something that any regular person gets to experience. Even though they managed to raise funds and get financial support, the family was struggling. According to his mom, the funds didn't last long. We had a lot of outfits, but within a year, he was out of them and it was time to do it all again. While specialty socks for his size 28 feet can cost $20 per pair, shoes can be even more of a challenge when it comes to his extraordinary size and the need for pain-relieving comfort. This means he can only really have one pair of shoes. And still, amazingly, he doesn't complain. Luckily for Brock, a revolutionary new technology has finally become a relatively affordable footwear option for Brock. The California-based company Feets offered their services, which can use 3D printing to make shoes at about half the price than regular custom-fit shoes. When Brock received his first pair of the custom kicks by Feets, he was over the moon, ecstatic. "Heck, I don't like them. I love them. Thank you," were his words. But Brock's medical condition was to face another outcome. Although all the fundraising and support they received was helpful and distracting, Brock's medical condition, along with his undeterminable future, was still loud and clear. And there was a medical update that would completely catch Brock and family off guard. Despite having the difficulty of being in confined spaces, Brock and his mother took the 1,000-mile flight from their home in Arkansas to visit a specialist. And he would deliver some of the most surprising news they'd heard in a long time. Brock was finally able to meet with a Sotos specialist. When he met Dr. Bradley Schaefer of Arkansas Children's Hospital, he got a promising prognosis. Although the chief geneticist said before that there was little he could do for his chronic spine pain, he now got positive news. Doctors kept telling them that Brock Brown would have a short life. So clearly it came as a surprise to them when Dr. Schaefer gave him some of the best news of his life. Already proving doctors wrong about his life expectancy, Brock's condition was revisited by Dr. Schaefer, who determined that he was out of life-threatening danger. "Brock is easily the tallest man I've ever seen," said Dr. Schaefer. "Unfortunately, he will always have to deal with some form of pain, but I believe that he'll have a regular lifespan." Now that Brock was given the green light from an expert on his condition, he had an emotional response. Brock Brown, the amazingly eternal optimist, was able to look past the less promising details and focus on the good news. "It's the best thing I could have heard," said Brown. "I'm so happy that I'll live for a long time." It's common for people with Soto syndrome to maintain a peak height in adulthood, but it's not clear whether that will be the case for Brock. It could mean that he might never be able to live alone. Nonetheless, him and his family remain hopeful and in good spirits. If Brock keeps growing at this rate of 6 inches a year, by the age of 21 he could surpass the height of the world's current tallest man, Turkey's Sultan Kosin, who measures in at an incredible 8 feet 2 inches. Despite the pain he has resulting from his condition, Brown has amazed everyone with his achievements. Being an optimist, he always looks forward to the future and has his own aspirations. I want to work for a sporting goods store, so something like that, a cashier or something, Brown stated. I just want to have my own job. Brown and his mother are looking forward to spending a long future together. She doesn't want to push him to do anything outside of his comfort zone. I just hope he has a good life and is happy with everything he ever does, the loving mother wishes for her son. If you're curious and want to know more about Brock or his condition, you can go to his Facebook page. As you can see from this post, they aim to bring Sotos syndrome into awareness. Aside from posting about his condition and getting support from people, they're giving updates. And recently, in November of this year, Brock has received another diagnosis. Unfortunately, Brock has recently received a new diagnosis. The 21-year-old has discovered that he has diabetes, and he's been in the hospital to keep his sugar levels regulated. The support page is asking for people to keep him in their thoughts. Judging by the photo they posted, Brock is continuing to keep a smile on his face. Despite all of his hardships, he remains hopeful. For sure, the attention he receives is keeping him afloat. Yet we already know that Sotos is a rare genetic disorder, but it might be of interest to know a little more about the condition to better understand what Brock and others with Sotos have to go through. The disorder is characterized by excessive physical growth during the first years of life. The excessive growth starts in infancy and continues into the early teen years. It may be accompanied by autism, mild intellectual disability, delayed motor, cognitive, and social development, hypotonia or low muscle tone, and speech impairments. It's tough to imagine what Brock and others with Sotos have to go through. Individuals with Sotos often have intellectual impairment, and most have behavioral problems. Unfortunately, the list goes on.